And the Word became flesh and lived among us. Today, as we celebrate lessons and carols, I was reflecting on this mixture of readings, and I got to thinking about a couple of things that I have read over the years. Has anyone heard of John Polkinghorne? Does that name ring a bell? Oh, you're going to learn about him today. John Polkinghorne was a professor of mathematical physics at Cambridge University in England. He had an endowed chair at Cambridge University in England. And he chucked it all to become an Anglican priest. Second call. He was ordained in 1982. And he didn't chuck science. He lived a cruciform life at the crossroads between science and faith. And he was a leading voice in why science and faith can walk together. They were not at odds with one another. I ran across him in 1998 in a doctor's waiting room, pregnant with my youngest. And I don't know if it was Newsweek or Time, it was one of those magazines, doing a whole story on the intersection of faith and science. And John Polkinghorne was in it. And he said he found that theology actually helped explain what was going on in the physical world for him. Because things that seem like they don't go together often do, not just theologically, but also in the observed natural world. So the example he gave was the conundrum of the two natures of Christ, which was affirmed at the Council of Chalcedon in 450 Common Era. And that was that Jesus was fully human and fully divine. Now that seems like a contradiction, right? Fully human, fully divine, 100% and 100%. The math ain't mathin', right? But he said, not so. This is not a contradiction because we observe it in the natural world. Light is both particle and wave. Fully particle, fully wave. If you observe it as a wave, you can't see it as a particle. And if you observe it as a particle, you can't see it as a wave. It looks contradictory. But this is the way it all works with light. So if it works that way with light, the light of all people, right? If it works that way with light, why not in the person of Jesus? And that led me to reflect further on a reading that I came across in my email from Episcopal priest and coach Rob Voyle, who talked about light in the midst of darkness. He talked about how hard right now it is to see light. There's a lot of really horrible stuff going on out there. Very heavy, very destructive, really anti-life. It's arraying itself. Forces are arraying themselves against life and against human flourishing. And we see it all the time. And it's very easy to see it because that pokes our fear. And when we're afraid, we don't know what to do with that. It can freeze us, it can paralyze us, and it can make us think that the light has somehow disappeared. But he pointed out something very basic in physics, and I am a very basic physics person. I did not take this class, so I know a rudimentary level of physics from my high school and college science. He pointed out something about light when we observe it as a wave and what can happen if it has a destructive interference. It can actually darken it out. If you take two light waves, lights travel in waves. We're going to talk about the wave part, not the particle part. We have two parts of a wave. We have amplitude, how much of it you get, and you have frequency, how often that wave happens, how often each crest happens. And depending on the frequency, it'll be the type of light that is there. Not all light is visible light. We have infrared, we have ultraviolet. We can't see those, but we have the visible spectrum too. So how fast, what the frequency is determines where it falls on that spectrum. But the amplitude is how much of it you have. More amplitude, more light. The problem becomes if we have two light beams and they're out of sync, out of phase, it's what's called. So if one wave is cresting and the other one's going to its nadir at the bottom, they cancel each other out. This is the technology behind noise canceling headphones. Sound works in waves too, right? And what can happen is two light beams out of phase can actually produce darkness. I found that fascinating to think about, especially given how much heaviness and darkness we seem to be getting, that interference, right? That destructive interference. But it doesn't mean that the light has disappeared. It's just out of sync. We see in our Christmas stories that there is destructive interference. The second to the last reading, because today is the feast and the observance of Holy Innocents. We bump it to Monday because rubrics, and we don't celebrate it on a Sunday. We move it forward one day. That horrible story about Herod killing the children in Bethlehem. And we can often hear it as a kind of a dissonant note in the middle of all of these stories of prophecy being fulfilled and light coming into the world and the Word made flesh and the adoration of the shepherds and the angels. And then we have this story about Herod and his rage. You see, when light comes into the world, there is attempts at dissonant interference. And that's what Herod was doing. Now, we don't have any other corroboration of that story. It's only in the Bible, only in the Gospel of Matthew. But it's on brand for Herod. Herod killed a wife and a son who threatened his throne. He had no problem killing his own kid because power is a corrupting influence. It raises that dissonant waveform in the human species. But there's also good news about light and about how we function as a society and how we function as the people of God. And that is when two light waves are in synchronization, right? They are in phase. They come together and they don't just overlap each other. So it's not like two waves going along like this. Instead, it's two waves going along like this. Because two waves in sync can magnify and amplify the amount of light. And you know this in your gut because when you light a candle and you put a mirror in front of it, what happens? Yeah, get more light. Because the light is in sync, it's in phase. It doesn't cancel anything out. God's light can never be completely canceled out. Oh, there can be destructive interference, no question about it. Our biblical story says this is the way of the world. This does happen. Horrible, terrible, violent things happen in the days of Jesus and throughout history, even to our own day. Herod hasn't disappeared. He's just changed forms. Herod hasn't disappeared. Herod just changes forms. And there will always be Herods, and that's not a gendered thing because women can be just as destructive. Herods always exist. They will always try to exercise their power. They will always try to walk at a different step that they set for themselves. But the people of God, on the other hand, have the opportunity to be in sync with the divine waveform. Now, it isn't easy because each one of us carries the capacity for hatred and violence. That's an all of us thing, not just Herod. It's all of us. We're all capable of that. And when we find that rising in ourselves, our first thing that we need do is go back to the light, to the source of light, the source in God to still our souls. We return to the sacraments, we return to prayer, we return to the scriptures, and we turn to the fellowship of other people in the community we know as the church. Because it's very hard to be in sync with God's purposes all by yourself. There's a lot of dissonant, destructive interference out there that wants to knock you off course. Being together with other Christians, those who follow the teachings of Jesus, strive to follow what he represented, those are the people that we come together with who can amplify the light that we are to carry into this world. So take heart when you turn on the news or it comes over your phone. Take heart. That disruptive and destructive interference does not get the last word. The last word belongs with God. And I encourage you to pray and receive the sacraments, delve into Scripture, be with the people of God, to strengthen your ability to synchronize, to become in phase with that eternal light that was sent from God.